Well, here we are, IB Nation Sports Talk on a Monday. My head is just throbbing today already,
Yeah,
Vince.
I
There
bet.
is so much going on. And I mean, it doesn't take long once the offseason gets here. You know, like 2 years ago at this time, remember, it was this day 2 years ago at almost this exact same time that the news of Brian Kelly started to
Oh,
get out. Remember?
it was Sunday night. It would have been last night.
Was it Sunday night or was it Monday? I thought it was Monday.
You know what? It was Monday night
Because
I
I was on
was
the air when it started coming out, I believe.
and I was at Riley doing concession stand duty with the baseball team.
Yeah.
And I ended up going up to my classroom to have an impromptu show and got kicked out by the janitors at midnight because we were having such a long show about him leaving. So
I want to go home. I don't know who you're talking about. But that was really the taking off point of the Irish Breakdown podcasts.
Oh, absolutely.
There was a podcast before that, but that was really when things caught fire.
That night, and then into the search and the all the off-season stuff, and that's when people really found
things
us.
Blew up.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yep,
100%.
Yep. So 2 years ago, Brian Kelly and Don Merriweather still trying to get back his burn ends, I guess. After the fact, I'm not sure. But that was the last game of the season 2 years ago. Only a little bit of. We've got so much to get to today. Marcus Freeman had a Zoom press conference with the media earlier today. It wasn't one of those that was live streamed. So I know, different media members have tweeted stuff that's come out of it. We're going to hear a lot of Marcus Freeman's comments on that in rapid fire. By the way, Vince, this show is usually over within an hour and a half-ish at the most. We might be here for a while tonight because we've got so much to talk about.
I mean,
people are already stirred up in the chat.
We can stretch it out because we're not going to get any good news here for a while, at least not from Marcus Freeman. But no, I mean it is good news, bad news, surprising. I mean, you name it, it checks all the boxes this week. Today with the news that has come out concerning Notre Dame, and it's very, very, very interesting.
Yep, that is exactly right. But when it comes to all this stuff, I just want to say up front, there are going to be a million guys entering the transfer portal. There were some today. Notre Dame's not going to be interested in all of them. There are going to be names that are going to be floated out there, a million rumors popping up daily. We're not going to talk about all of them because, we're sure not going to take all of them seriously. It's called a rumor for a reason. And I've said this before. There's a big difference between someone who actually works in the media, especially someone who covers this beat on a daily basis. There are a lot of good bloggers out there as well, but they're not all trying to act like they have information that they don't actually have access and sources to. It's one thing to watch college football. It's another thing to have an X account, not put your name on the X account, and then try to pass off other people's information as if it's your own. And I think you all know who I'm talking about, at that point. Now, there are other people out there too who are going to put stuff up. There are going to be rumors. There are going to be reports. You just have to figure out, you have to look. And I think I just saw you tweet about it before the show started. Like if you're a Notre Dame football fan and you want to be sure what to take seriously, look at any one of the 20 people on this, or 20 plus people on this beat, because there are a lot of good reporters on this beat, not just people who work for Irish Breakdown. And if it is legit information, those guys are actually going to be reporting it. Now, I realize, just like with our board, sometimes you have to have, subscriptions or access to the board or whatever to actually get that information. But I just want to put that up front because there's just so much BS out there. Rumors can actually be more interesting than the truth, but they're largely just a bunch of BS that start swirling out there.
Well, yeah, and I, like you said, I tweeted about it. It's like there's going to be so much nonsense out there, and the fact that people were taking what a guy on the Arkansas beat had to say about Notre Dame's assistant coaches, like, come on, man, like. Understand your source.
Now, again, at least he is some kind of reporter, because I went and looked, and he says that he covers recruiting for Arkansas and whatever. But again, it's a little flimsy for him just to have that information on who is contacting the UNLV offensive coordinator when he's throwing like what, 5 or 6 Power 5 schools into the mix, and who's contacted him, that he would have access to all of that, considering he works at Arkansas. And by the way, I just saw this come up in the tweet or in the chat. And there is a tweet that just came out as we were starting this show. Irish center Zeke Correll is the 3rd Irish player today to enter the transfer portal,
which is surprising and yet not at the same time, I would say. So,
you know what? Pretty okay with the way Ashton Craig has played.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not saying he's perfect. He's not, but I really like that size and more physicality they've got out of the center position the last couple of games.
Let me put it this way.
And that's not a shot on Zeke Correll, because I've always thought that fans were probably a little bit too hard on Zeke Correll, in terms of, well, he doesn't do this, he doesn't do this. Zeke Correll's been a hell of a center for Notre Dame.
Absolutely.
So I'm not 100%. Knocking him by any means. But, again, he's at that point in his career where maybe just moving on and going someplace else and sort of serving the youth on this roster, is good for both sides, kind of thing.
If I was the head coach, and I'm not saying that this is how it went down or whatever, if I was the head coach at the beginning of this season, Zeke Correll is my starter, regardless. He's my starter. He's a returning starter, all of those different things, right? So he starts this season. We got a chance to see Ashton Craig because of the concussion and all of that. And he's really impressed me with what he's been able to do in the 2 games that he's been in there. And at this point, I think that it's a conversation that you have. Obviously, they had him with all the kids. It would be, hey, Zeke, thank you so much for what you gave to this university. We appreciate everything that you've done. We are going to go in a different direction moving forward, but you are more than welcome to do whatever it is that you need to do or however it is you want to handle it. We, thank you so much. You've been a multi-year starter for us. You've been really, really good, et cetera, but it's time to kind of pass the torch. And that may have been a tough conversation to have if that's the way that it went down, but I think that's the right decision as well. I love Zeke Correll. I love the fact that he's a little bit undersized. He battled his butt off. I mean, he was really good for Notre Dame. Yep. But I also, at the same time, think that it is time to pass the torch to Ashton Craig or whoever wins that job, because I really like what I've seen from him the last 2 games. He's bigger, he's stronger, he's a little bit more fleet of foot, all of those different things. And so I think that this is a good move. I think it's a good move for all parties involved.
And that's Marcus Freeman, and I'll get to the soundbite from him here in just a minute, because he kind of combined transfer portal and bowl opt-outs into the same answer when he was asked about it in that Zoom today, and I'll play that here in a minute. Again, there are a million things that we're going to get to. We're going to try to get to in this show. A lot of Marcus Freeman's comments from that Zoom are one of them, because he addressed a lot of things. Like, literally,
it's amazing.
There's like a week's worth of, if we only wanted to do rapid fire, there's like a week's worth of Marcus Freeman rapid fire content if we wanted to. But Seriously. By Thursday, it would, obviously be old news. So Bryce was asked, there's Tyree, there's Zeke in the transfer portal, and who? Nana Osafo-Mensah was actually the first one
he's the first
to declare today. We're going to save Nana for rapid fire, because just want to space this out a little bit, unless you really want to get to all the transfers individually up front. I wanted to mostly talk about Chris Tyree first, though, especially before the Zeke Correll news came out. So wish Zeke Correll nothing but the best. Again, I agree with everything you said, and I think you agree with my sentiment as well. I think he's been a really good center for Notre Dame. He's done really good, really admirable job on some solid, not completely great Irish offensive lines, but he's decided who knows, maybe it's a conversation. I'd be curious to kind of hear what some of these conversations are, like exactly what the reasons are they decide to move on. But Notre Dame's got a lot of really good young offensive linemen behind these current guys, and ready to kind of jump in there. Joe Alt is, most likely someone we're going to have to talk about at some point. We'll save that until then. Yeah. But the Chris Tyree news, Vince, this hits me right here.
Yeah.
He made his announcement this afternoon on social media. I texted you and Jesse about it, and you both basically had the same response. You're like, hold it, what? Are you serious? What is going on in the world right now?
It was such a nonchalant text from you. You're like, hey, do you want to talk about Chris Tyree transferring at the beginning of the show or during rapid fire? I'm like, wait, what happened? What? Come on. Dang it.
Because as DK said, Sean is scrambling right now to change up the whole show with the defections. Tyree, get yours. I mean, I didn't have to change up the whole show, but I definitely, that was a text conversation that we had within an hour of the show starting today, because I just happened to go to the site. And then, of course, I was going to check the message boards. But again, as DK says, Tyree broke the message boards.
I
wasn't even letting you log in.
I was having trouble getting, like, you told me where you saw it. And I'm like, all right, well, I got to go get on the board and I got to find. And it, there's a lot of people on the board right now. Let's just put it that way. It's a good problem to have.
Yep. And one more good one from DK. He said this might have to be a 3-hour show. No Golden Bachelor with the missus tonight. Out on Golden Bachelor. Tonight would be 90 Day Fiance Pillow Talk night is what tonight would probably be. Combination, not as much Monday Night Football because it's not like it's exactly going to be a scintillating matchup between the Bears and the Vikings. All I'm looking for is 3 catches from DJ Moore so I can win my fantasy game.
I think
it's like a 3.5 point game going into tonight.
I think you got a shot at that.
Kyron Williams just came off the IR yesterday, and I'm like, I'll wait and see. He's been out for like 5 weeks. Of course, he has a monster game, and so he's sitting on my bench. If I had started him, my game would be over right now.
Yeah, that's true.
People care much more about Chris Tyree though than they give a damn about my fantasy football team.
This Chris Tyree.
Look, here's what it comes down. 3 carries this year. 26 catches. So that's 29 total touches in 12 games. He averaged less than 3 touches per game this season. And 2 years in a row with 2 different offensive coordinators, Vince, they did a very poor job. They just did a very poor job of getting the ball in the hands of the guy who I still think has been their best playmaker or, should be their best playmaker the last 2 years with the speed, with the skill that he has, moved from running back to wide receiver. There was a transition phase with that. Sure. He's a guy, though, that you had to, with the lack of inexperience that you had at receiver. Correct. He's the guy who stayed healthy all year, and he still only had 3 touches a game. And, we've downplayed a lot of transfers the last couple of years. This one just can't be downplayed, Vince. You cannot downplay it. Like, I know a lot of people are talking about, well, you've got these 5 other guys. Their best position is the slot. They're young. They're growing. They're talented too, blah, blah, blah. Bottom line in this, I think, is Chris Tyree wants to play in the NFL. And if you're getting 29 touches in a season where you had such a lack of one returning talent at the wide receiver position, lack of experience at the wide receiver position, and all he's touching the ball, 26 catches, 29 touches, he wants to play in the NFL. And I think that in his mind, and I don't blame him, he feels like he needs to move on to give himself a better chance to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I get it from his point of view. I mean, and you say the numbers, and I get it. There's no doubt about it. And, he's obviously dynamic in the return game, scored a touchdown in the punt return. He's dynamic in the pass game when you get him the football. He's dynamic in the run game when you utilize him correctly. And they didn't utilize him correctly. And, I was hoping, in my mind, I was thinking to myself, this is a win-win for Notre Dame and Chris Tyree if he comes back for another season, because he needs another full year at wide receiver to be considered a true, wide receiver. And totally agree with that, because he's not going to the NFL. Like, he's transferring to another school. And so he should have stuck around. But again, there's no guarantee he was going to get the ball more at Notre Dame than he did the past 2 seasons. And so I get that he left. I mean, you can go to a lower level program and be the dude and get the ball all the time and just show how dynamic you can be with the ball in your hands and make an NFL roster next year. So, I mean, I understand it from Chris Tyree's standpoint. I mean, if I was the Notre Dame staff, I would have recruited the crap out of him, told him, look, this is how we're going to use you. This is what we're going to do. All of those different things.
Well, look, you still had a full offseason. Like, you can talk about all these guys are slot guys. You have a full offseason for all of them. Not all of them can play the slot every game. Someone's got to eventually play outside, regardless of who that is. Chris Tyree is a guy who you should literally be lining up everywhere on the field.
Backfield,
slot, he should be an excellent time. Yeah, he should be on both sides of the field, in the slot, in the backfield, motioning in and out of the backfield, all these different things. There's so many ways that they could have and should have been using him, but they just weren't. They could have done so many different things. Heard people talk about jet sweeps all the time, and they gave him the ball, and like that didn't necessarily work out. Motion him in, motion him out, give him a quick, there's just so much they could have done, but they didn't. And again, David was calling me out for my verbiage here.
I heard it, but I wasn't going to say anything.
If I said inexperience, I obviously meant to say experience, lack of experience. Come on, I don't call you guys out for your grammar in the chat.
Seriously.
So
there's been some bad ones.
Yeah, we're all friends. I get it.
We are.
I'm pretty sure David was joking, and I'm joking as well. But I meant to say lack of experience, obviously, with the other guys at the receiver. And, I haven't talked much today, and I just, as we started the show, my throat's a little raspy, and I have no idea why. So that's not good with a basketball game 2 days away. Hopefully that goes okay.
Yeah, good call.
But that's, so Chris Tyree is moving on. There are a lot of young wide receivers on the roster. I hope that it really works out for him, because this is a guy with the speed that he has and the versatility that he has. I think that he's a guy, when he does get to the NFL, and he's going to be on an NFL roster. Like, you can talk about, running backs and lack of priority for them and devalued and all this different stuff. He's going to be on an NFL roster. And I think that he's got an opportunity to do some really good things, especially depending on what kind of team he goes to. Once he does get to the NFL.
I mean, he could just be a return specialist and be just fine, to be honest with you, and make a career in the NFL. I think there's more to him than that. Obviously, I think they would need to, whatever NFL team it is, can utilize him and all of that. But I mean, just from a pure speed standpoint, he could make it as a return guy, Sean. And I laugh because somebody in the chat earlier says he doesn't break tackles. I challenge you to go back and watch that punt return against Pitt where he broke like 4.
I was going to say there were at least 3 that I remember.
Like, come on, man. Like, it's just, Anyway, this is a loss for Notre Dame. Pure and simple. I don't care who else is on the roster.
And look, part of the reason he might not break as many tackles as a receiver is the lack of creativity that they're doing things with him, like getting him running away from defensive backs and getting him the ball. And, we just didn't see it. We didn't see it, unfortunately.
Agreed.
There's obviously, people agree, there's a lot of lack of creativity with this offense in general. And that's something else that we're going to get to here in just a minute when we have some of Marcus Freeman's comments about the coaching positions going forward, and Gerad Parker and his assessment of Parker going forward.
And there's, people are asking, who does this fall on? Is it Parker? Is it Freeman? Is it Stuckey? I think there's blame to go around, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't think this falls on one guy or another. I think there's blame to go around, whether it was Coach Stuckey not pushing to get him the ball more, whether it was Parker not getting him the ball more, whether it was Freeman saying, hey, we got to dial things down a little bit, be more conservative. You can blame whoever you want, and I think there's blame to go. You can blame Ron Paulus if you want to. There's blame because everybody wants to do that, it seems like recently. But there's blame to go around on this, in my opinion, because the bottom line was he wasn't getting the football. That's a problem. And so that starts at the top with the head coach, coordinator, position coach, all of them. There's blame to go around. That's the way I see it.
Right. Position coach obviously is responsible for teaching the guys at his position the nuances of the position, the plays that they're supposed to run, in this case, the routes that they're supposed to run, and things like that. And then working with the coordinator, like, this is what he does best. Maybe we can do this with him, those kind of things. We have no idea how many of those kind of conversations took place. And, again, looking at what transpired on the field with the lack, now he was inexperienced as well, but with the lack of any veteran presence outside of Jaden Thomas and Deion Colzie really coming into the season, and with the kind of skills that Chris Tyree has, he just had to touch the ball more than 3 times
100%.
per game. And as the season progressed, and you've got all these young guys, and you've got Jaden Thomas hurt, and Deion Colzie is out as well, they needed to be targeting Chris Tyree, whether it's a combination of handoffs or passes. They needed to be targeting him at least 8 to 10 times per game, and that just wasn't happening. Now,
not even close. Yeah.
Did they target him a little bit more? It seemed like it maybe. The last couple games, I'd have to go back and look at the targets again, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen. It's unfortunate.
It's not enough. I mean, the bottom line is it's not enough. I mean, he had 2 targets on Saturday, and he caught both of them, and they were on those RPOs, the 2 outs. And if you were paying attention to upon further review, there were other times where he was open down the field too, and the ball just didn't come to him. And whether is that an OC problem because he called the play that got him open, or is that a quarterback problem that he didn't get him the football? So like I said, there's blame to go around here. I don't think anybody can escape the blame, but here's one thing I will say. If we're going to blame Coach Stuckey for things, then we also have to give him credit because I believe that he turned Chris Tyree into one heck of a wide receiver.
Yeah, he did. Chris Tyree is a heck of a receiver, and that makes it that much more frustrating and flabbergasting that he didn't touch the ball more than he did, especially the second half of the season. Again, with all the circumstances that were lined up that said this guy needs to touch the ball more.
Yep. So, I mean, like I said, blame to go around. Stinks that he's not going to be in a Notre Dame uniform next year. But one thing I can promise you is I'll be rooting for, Chris Tyree wherever he ends up unless he's playing against Notre Dame.
Yep. Okay. Plenty more to get to here. USMA 87 wants to know if the staff is on the recruiting trail today in California. The way Marcus Freeman talked today, he said they got back on campus at 6 a.m. Sunday morning from the trip from California. And he said that these conversations that we've just been talking about, and we'll play that soundbite, bowl opt-outs, transfer portal, all these conversations were going to begin today and run through Friday when he said the staff is going to get out on the road. So he said they're going to get out on the road on Friday. So that's my understanding based on what he said today, that they're not necessarily out on the road right now, but having, like all the position coaches and whatever else, they're kind of taking care of this end of season, having these conversations with different players about how does the player see his future? How does the staff see his future? And then some of these decisions are going to be made. And then what he said was Friday is when they're going to be out on the road.
Makes sense.
So, also kind of negates the need for that Northern California trip every other year if that's the way. If that's the way the staff's going to do it, right?
Funny how that works.
Oh, let me see.
And obviously all of these decisions are supported by Notre Dame because they're all coming out with the Notre Dame graphic and they're all the same. And so clearly, they're going through Notre Dame to make these announcements. You know what I'm saying? So these guys aren't just going rogue like Pine went rogue last year. Remember that? He kind of did his own thing.
Mm-hmm. Did his own little end around, scooted out the door. And
that was a whole weird kind of a situation. But like you can tell the 3 guys that have decided to go to the portal, all their graphics are identical. You know what I mean? And so they're obviously running it through the university. They're all well aware that this is all happening, that kind of a deal. So,
yes.
So I think that's something important to, get out there.
So BGS of Clark Lee is getting fired. This is not something I know.
Not to my knowledge.
I just saw this, and this is the only reason I'm addressing it. Jalen Merricks, who is the lead writer at The Door Report, he covers Vanderbilt, is reporting that Vanderbilt is expected to part ways with Clark Lee and hire Jimbo Fisher to replace him.
I heard that too. I don't know. We'll see. That's the one report that I did hear.
Yeah, it's like I don't. I started the show talking about listen to the Notre Dame guys if you're talking about Notre Dame.
And that was yesterday that he reported that. And I haven't heard anybody else report it except for him. And so
doesn't make it wrong. It just means
it doesn't make it wrong.
Know,
You're right. It does not make it wrong, but I would find it very interesting. Number one, that Jimbo, who's being offered $77 million, would want to take over the Vanderbilt program.
I would find it hard too. That to go from Texas A&M to Vanderbilt, that would not be an optimal position for Jimbo Fisher. With all the boatloads of money he's going to sit on and not have to work, I would not want to take the Vanderbilt position unless he's going to sink his own money into the program. Father David saying that was on the board that it was fake. Again, I don't want to go down that road. We've got plenty of other things to talk about right now, Notre Dame related.
Here's one thing I will say. The Vanderbilt football Twitter account 3 hours ago put out a quote from Clark Lee about him firing the strength and conditioning coach.
Okay.
So if he's putting out firings, I don't think he's getting fired. So that's what I would read into that. And just to stir the rumor mill, because I know everybody wants me to do that. Jake Bayless, the starting running back for Penn High School, familiar last name,
right,
committed to go to Vanderbilt as a preferred walk-on, and now they just fired their strength and conditioning coach. Coincidence? I don't know. I'm just saying.
Clark Lee's got other guys on his staff, both on the field and in different support positions that came from his time here at Notre Dame. So I would not be surprised.
There's a lot of Notre Dame connections down there at Vanderbilt right now because of Clark Lee. And that's one of the reasons that Jake wanted to go down there. Number one, academics. He's a very high academic kid, has over 4.0 GPA. Great kid, all the leadership positions and everything. So he wanted to go to a high academic school, and the connections that they have down there with the coaches and all of that, the preferred walk-on spot was very clear and very nice, and it just was a nice fit for him. So just saying, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yep. Okay, moving along, Marcus Freeman did his Zoom call today, spoke to the media, talked about a lot of different things in a pretty short amount of time, a little bit more than 20 minutes he spoke with us today. One of the things that he was asked about is this rumor/report that Notre Dame has interest in UNLV offensive coordinator Brennan Marion. So, again, this came from the report on X came from a guy named Jacob Davis. His Twitter bio says that he covers Arkansas recruiting for the SI site allhogs.com. He said Notre Dame, Penn State, Oklahoma are in the Brennan Marion sweepstakes. That's a quote from his account. So I guess it's news to Marcus Freeman. Here is Marcus Freeman's response.
I have no clue who that is. I don't know who that is.
That's the UNLV offensive coordinator.
Oh, no, there's no truth to that. Not from myself or anybody. I think football program. No, there's no truth to that.
Vince, typical, off-season flavor of the moment stuff. Off-season gets here, people start throwing darts at the board. Fans who don't know who the guy was 5 minutes ago, it's like, I'm infatuated now, and it's just got to be a thing. And the guy was at Texas for a year, first year as UNLV offensive coordinator this year. I mean, I think we can agree. Now UNLV turned their offense around. I think we can agree that it's harder to, a little more scrutiny and harder to do things at Notre Dame than it is at UNLV in the Mountain West Conference. But regardless, Marcus Freeman started off by saying, I don't know who that is.
That's a fantastic answer, by the way. A fantastic answer. I wish I don't want to throw anybody specifically under the bus, but I just wish the people on the beat wouldn't feed into some of those rumors by even asking the question. You know what I mean? Like, I get that you want to get a definitive answer. Maybe that's why it was asked, but it's like, who would have believed? Who believed that the UNLV offensive coordinator, that they were actually, I don't know. I just find that particular rumor to be ridiculous in the first place, but yet we give it legs and we give it credibility by asking the head football coach that question.
But again, all someone's got to do is tweet it, and then
I know
everyone, it's out there. Yeah. Everyone wants to talk about it, and I'm not discrediting what this guy says, but again, it's like we know nothing about this guy as a reporter and how factual, how often, what his hit rate is with any of this kind of stuff. Anybody can say these kind of things.
Sure,
you could rattle off and, just like what we were talking about with the Jimbo Fisher to Vanderbilt thing. Like anyone can say this stuff. Everyone's got a source. That doesn't mean the sources are always right.
Right.
Sources have agendas as well sometimes. And a lot of times sources have agendas. But so in any case, that's what Marcus Freeman had to say about it. I hope that means we can put it to rest, when he starts off that supposedly Notre Dame has contacted him, and Marcus Freeman starts out by saying, who? So, yes.
That's great.
Okay. The first question he actually got today is whether or not, on the subject of coaching changes, whether or not he anticipates any coaching staff changes. And here is what Marcus Freeman had to say about that. I had to stall a little bit because actually, you know what? We'll just jump into the assessment of Gerad Parker. Here you go.
Yeah, I think our entire offensive staff and Coach Parker have done a good job of continuously trying to find ways to improve, right? And sometimes it takes setbacks to figure out what we need to do to improve moving forward. I think the biggest thing that I've noticed more than anything as you evaluate the first 12 games is that we have to continuously find a way to perform better when we're playing better defenses. And they understand that and they embrace that challenge. And we'll continuously work tirelessly to figure out a way to continue to have a better performance when we face really good defenses. And but again, I don't want to put a one word or one phrase sentence on how I feel about the job they've done. I have a lot of confidence in that offensive staff, and but I understand the expectations of a Notre Dame football program. Right, is that no matter who you're playing, that you put a performance that's worthy of winning on the field on Saturdays. And so we'll figure out what we have to do to make sure that our performances continuously improve. I will never be okay with being status quo, with being average. I want to be the best. And I believe we have a staff that has the same mentality, and we now have to continue to find ways to make sure when we play in these games that we do have an output that is the best.
Okay, so there's Marcus Freeman's assessment of Gerad Parker, his first season as offensive coordinator. What did you think about that, Vince? I know that's not going to make a lot of people happy, I guess, first of all.
Well, I mean, good luck making Notre Dame fans happy outside of winning a national championship. And even then, you're going to get people that are going to complain. And I guarantee you, if we do a post-game show after the national championship game where Notre Dame won, there will be people with negative comments to make. So you're never going to make everybody happy. That's just not possible, right? And so I have no problem with what he said because he's pretty much right. There was a lot of good things that happened this year. They need to be better against the better teams, period. And he didn't lay it all at the foot of the offensive coordinator or the offensive staff, but he said that we need to do a better job. And he's right. They do need to do a better job. And so I have no problem with that. It was a vote of confidence, but also an understanding that, yeah, it wasn't good enough and we need to do better. And so I think that's the right thing to say at this point.
I agree. And it's just when you look at the stats do say that maybe they were maybe that they should have been better than performance. I don't know. They averaged 39.1 points a game. What have we all been waiting for? An offense that could score some points, right? It is the second most points in school history, the most since the 2012 team. So it's the best, highest scoring Notre Dame offense in over 100 years. And they averaged nearly 7 yards per play, which also ranks second all time. But you heard Marcus Freeman say, look, we didn't do good enough against the better defenses on the schedule. And that's where they have to improve. I think that we can all agree with that because it's kind of like the Ian Book season where I believe it was 2018, where he lit up the group of 5 teams on the schedule, but he hardly did anything against the Power 5 teams on the schedule, right? And it's like you've got the same kind of split for Notre Dame between the bad teams on the schedule, the good teams on the schedule. Sure. And, here's what they scored against the bad teams: 42, 56, 41, 21, 48. The 21 is obviously Duke. And, I kind of bad with the grain of salt. They're still a solid defense. 48, 58, 45, 56. Against NC State, which is actually one of the better statistical defensive teams in the country, 45 points. The most points scored against NC State. So that's great, right? But it's 14 against Ohio State, 23 against Clemson, 20 against Louisville. And I kind of went back and looked at some of these numbers. Total defense and run defense, two of the more important defensive statistical categories for a team. Ohio State, number 3, Clemson, number 6, Louisville, number 19, NC State, to me, somewhat surprisingly, but it's probably, it's kind of how they ended up salvaging a season, number 25. Run defense, Louisville, number 11, NC State, number 15, better than Ohio State, which was number 21, Clemson, number 24. And then you look at turnovers gained, Clemson and NC State tied for 7th in the nation, Louisville, number 35. So, again, like they played some legitimate defenses. I'm not trying to say that's an excuse because to Marcus Freeman's point, they absolutely have to be better against them. And I think that it was on the Countdown show we were talking last week, Vince. Not only were they worse against them, the overall offensive philosophy changed against most of those better teams on the schedule. They were much more conservative in those games. And so that's, I think, where we have to ask the question, how much of it is Parker? How much of it is Freeman? And at the same time, it definitely felt like there was not a 100% lack of trust in Sam Hartman. Now, Sam Hartman gave them times where he did, where he showed that maybe he shouldn't be trusted. But I do also wonder, like, how much is being pounded into him, like was pounded into some of these other quarterbacks we've seen under Tommy Rees and Brian Kelly. Don't turn over the ball. Don't turn over the ball. Don't turn over. And then it's almost like you turn that into, like a negative thought process. And unfortunately, he ends up turning the ball. Again, and I'm not saying it's all on that, but there was like so much emphasis, it seemed like, on some of that conservatism. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I think that it's the product of having a defensive coach as your head coach and not really having to deal with the offensive side of the ball very much in his career, right? And he wants to be offensive and defensive line oriented. He wants to run the football. He wants to be conservative. He wants to stretch a game. He wants to possess the ball, all of those different things, right? Unfortunately, that is not what college football is right now. That's what college football was under when he played. That's Jim Tressel type football, right? And that's one of his main, mentors and all of that. He's going to if he wants to be successful, he's going to have to let loose the reins offensively. You can still be dominant running the football. You can still be dominant defensively, but you're going to have to expand things out offensively against those good defenses. Because look, you can go back and you can watch those games that they didn't do well offensively, and it's very clear they were not trying to push the ball down the field. They were not being creative in the pass game. They were not being creative in the run game. It was a very conservative game plan. And so that's what needs to happen in the offseason, right? And, we kind of talked about coming out of the second bye, right? The last 2 games. And again, I don't care what the competition was. That doesn't matter. You can still see what the game plan is. You can still see one play building off of another. You can see all the different things that you want to see offensively. We've seen it in the last 2 games. Now, if they go ultra conservative against whoever they play in the bowl game, that's a step back. But if they continue the way they've played these last 2 games, I think that's a considerable step forward. And I'm excited to see what the offseason brings and what they do, going into next year on the road at College Station in game 1, right? Can they open it up? Can they do different things, with the talent that they are going to have, that they have already on the roster? Can they do those things? That's going to be the biggest question, Sean, are these 2 games an aberration? or is this the beginning of what a good offense a good to great offense could be? So that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, Michael Hahn said I didn't mention Duke. Duke has the number 45 total defense and number 54 run defense. So they're, again, like, they looked like they were supposed to be one of the best defensive teams Notre Dame played. They would be the next best, basically, after that group that I just mentioned. But again, they're right there, middle tier in the 50s. All these other teams that I mentioned, NC State, Clemson, Louisville, and who was the other one? There was one other that I mentioned: NC State, Clemson, Louisville, and Ohio State. Ohio State. They're all top 25 in all those categories, and most of them are in the top 10 in those categories. So Duke, next tier below, still a solid defense, but it just a little bit different. Not quite in that elite echelon. And I agree. Like I said it on Thursday, or on whenever that was in our countdown to kickoff show at the end of last week. The level of competition would matter, and that's what we saw these last two games. Did they decide they could have a more imaginative, more creative approach to offense because they felt like they were just better than some of these other teams straight up with the level of talent that they have, and they were, just like most of the rest of the teams on the schedule? And, the reverse side of that is because the talent level was better on some of the with some of these elite defenses, did they feel like they couldn't take some of those chances? Sure. Again, like maybe because of the lack of experience at receiver or whatever else. I don't know, but you're absolutely right. And this bowl game, like, if it is LSU, the good news is LSU doesn't have an elite defense.
Oh,
They've
their
got
defense
an
is terrible.
Awesome offense.
Their defense
they don't
is
have
terrible.
They don't have an elite defense.
Yeah.
And while there's going to be some talent out there, it's going to be a chance for Notre Dame to go out and make some plays.
Yes, 100%. 100%. And they should have an aggressive offensive game plan against that defense if that's who it ends up having. You and I are going to be the first ones to be able to talk about it next week because that's going to come out on Sunday, right? And so, we'll have a chance to talk about it. And LSU's defense is garbage. And they'll probably have a bunch of opt-outs too, which will make them even worse, which will be even more fun. So, yeah.
Well, we don't know what Notre Dame's is going to look like yet. So,
that's fair.
Count your chickens yet. So we've already got Chris Tyree and Nana and Zeke all leaving. So
this is true. That's a very, so, I mean, right now with the three guys that have left, that does not, shake my confidence in Notre Dame's ability to win a bowl game, obviously. When you look at it, right? But it hurts your depth at defensive line, not having Nana. I wonder if Zeke would have started the bowl game. I wonder if maybe they had already turned the page.
I was wondering that as well. Because you would assume that by the bowl game, he's going to be back from concussion protocol. Right. And it's like the way Craig has played the last couple of games. I was wondering maybe what that would look like. And that's obviously not going to be a factor now, unless Ashton Craig is hurt. We'll assume that he's going to be out there starting at center for Notre Dame. And again, going back to that, I've been pretty happy with what I've seen overall with Craig. It's, again, just the physicality from the center of the line, the size and the physicality that he brings. I feel like he can stone some guys there in the middle. Yeah. Maybe Zeke was a little too small to stone sometimes.
Agreed. Agreed. I mean, I will never question the effort of Zeke Correll. I
thought not at all.
I thought he did a great job.
Don't mean it like that.
It's just sometimes he was physically outmatched. I mean, that's just a fact. And sometimes because he was physically outmatched, he would just stalemate a guy, which isn't terrible. Like, you stalemate a guy, at least he's not getting into the backfield, right? But, having a bigger, stronger guy in that spot is not a terrible thing either. So again, I think that was a mutual parting of ways. And I think it's not a terrible thing for Notre Dame. It's not a terrible thing for Zeke Correll either. So that one I'm okay with. So as long as there isn't a wave of guys to announce, and God only knows that could be the case, I still like Notre Dame's chances moving forward, or at least in the bowl game.
For people who are just jumping in with us right now, we do have a few more people than we had at the start of the show, because I've seen some questions pop up. including with this super chat from Jacob, released Zeke Correll to the portal. Thanks for the super chat, Jacob. We did talk about it earlier in the show. And again, I'm assuming you're one of the guys who got in a little bit late. But yeah, so Zeke Correll, Chris Tyree, and Nana Osafo-Mensah all in the transfer portal today. Those are the first three guys in the portal for Notre Dame. We will see kind of how that plays out in terms of others. So we started off with Marcus Freeman's comments on Gerad Parker and his assessment of Gerad Parker there. He was also asked, and I did find it, I had my my cuts kind of scrambled around here because I cut so much audio today. Seriously. He was asked if he anticipates any staff changes this offseason. So here's Marcus Freeman's response to that.
Yeah, if it's up to me, as I just told the coaching staff in our staff meeting, I have a strong belief in the coaches that we have in this football program and would love all of them to be back. There's obviously places that we have to improve on all three phases, and the coaches understand that, and they definitely are up for the challenge. But the thing I've learned in this short time as head coach is that consistency is so important. I looked at where we were last year defensively at the end of the season to where we are now. Yes, the personnel continues to improve, but the consistency in what we're doing, the consistency in our coaching staff, I think truly impacts the performance. And that's why we've been able to improve so much on the defensive side of the ball. And as I look at as our offensive side of the ball, this is the first year for this group to be together. And I've seen a lot of bright spots in places that we have to improve. And, the biggest things I told Coach Parker and the staff is that, we have to improve our performance, especially those big games versus good defenses, because those are the type of teams that we have to find a way to beat if we want to be a championship program. And so, but I believe that we have the coaches that will help continuously move this performance forward and enhance what we do so that we do find a way to win those big games. And so I think back to my first year as a coordinator and our staff, we had a great staff, and I think we finished it when I was at Cincinnati, 90-something in the country. And thank God Coach Fickle didn't make a change, and that he gave me and the staff the ability to work through some of the deficiencies that we had, and we were able to prove. And so that's the same thing I've just reiterated to our coach staff, is that I believe the number one thing is the consistency in terms of what we're doing so that our players can continue to play at a high level, play fast, and, be able to enhance as we move forward.
So there you go. There are his thoughts on, overall staff changes. I will say this, while it doesn't sound like Marcus Freeman has any obvious intentions of making changes, none that he's going to tell us about right now, odds are someone's going to be plucked.
Yeah.
So, Al
Golden, it's going to be out of his control.
Al Golden is the obvious candidate. And, there were other guys who were nearly plucked last year. And Crying Belly had the comment, "I'm just scared to lose Coach McCullough."
He'd be the first one on my list that's probably going to go.
Yeah, and because he's that good, and
that's if it's up to me,
that's part of the good problem to have, I guess. When you hire good coaches and they do good things, then they're going to move on and get opportunities.
Yeah.
It stinks for you, especially for the short term, because then you've got to go out, find the replacement, all that different stuff. But it's also good for the program because it means that you are also empowering them to make their decisions, and their decisions within the program matter, and they're developing guys the right way. They're recruiting guys the right way. And I mean, Dylan McCullough has just been killing it in both as a recruiter and as a developer. And that would be a tough one to lose, Vince.
Yeah, no, it would be terrible. Every head coach, unless there's glaring issues, right, it wants to maintain their staff because continuity is super important when it comes to a staff. I mean, some of these guys haven't even been on the staff for a year, right? And so, having that continuity, I think, is super important. And of course, I'm hopeful as a Notre Dame fan that they all stay intact because, look, Here's the other thing that I think is somewhat comical, right? You've got the two coaches that everybody wanted fired last year were Al Golden and Al Washington. Am I right?
Yeah.
Nobody's saying that now, right?
Right.
And so,
and that's what Marcus Freeman was addressing there
right.
at that end. Like, he had the 90th ranked defense his first season as defensive coordinator at Cincinnati. Things
Correct.
obviously worked out for him as a young coach, because I realize it's a little bit apples to oranges when you're comparing an experienced coach like Al Golden to an inexperienced coordinator like Gerad Parker. But the Marcus Freeman that Marcus Freeman just told us about was an inexperienced defensive coordinator as well. And it didn't take him too long to become the hot commodity, lured by LSU, coming to Notre Dame and becoming the head coach at Notre Dame within just a year. So he's closer to this situation than we are. You have to trust his feel, I think. I realize that right now it might not look like Gerad Parker is the long-term answer, but you just said it. It was just a year ago that those two guys, Golden and Washington, no one would have cared if they would have walked out the door at any point. And look how differently you feel about him just a year later.
Exactly. So give him some time, and you're gonna. I as long as things change at the top with the philosophy and all of that, I'm good. Like I'm good, and I think you're gonna see fruits of that labor, because there's also a ton of talent that's very young, and there's talent that's coming in, and they're gonna, like, people aren't saying Notre Dame's not fast enough anymore. People aren't saying Notre Dame's not athletic enough anymore. Now it's a matter of making sure that those guys are able to make plays, and you're scheming guys open, and you're doing all of those things. If they can keep everybody that's on the stat, that is not going to happen. But if they can keep all 10 assistants on staff going into 24, you're going to reap those rewards.
Yeah, and look, I'm not saying I'm 100% that it's going to happen, or I believe that it's going to happen with Parker. But again, like, Marcus Freeman believed in the two defensive coaches we just talked about, and the feel about them is completely different. And when you do start to have some of these other guys coming in, that changes some of the dynamics as well. The biggest thing, three biggest things, I think, especially, well, one or two, I don't know if I can count. Biggest things, teams got to figure out how to go on the road and play more consistently on the road, not turn the ball. I mean, look at the turnovers in the last three games. Because, like, you can forgive them to an extent with Louisville and Clemson, just because of, again, like, when you look at how good those defenses are, you can forgive that to an extent. But two completely unforced turnovers by Sam Hartman in the first half, both the fumble and the interception. And then, nearly another fumble and two other turnovers afterwards. They were, they turned the ball over 12 times in their last three road games. That is just that. And that's, so it's not just like, is your focus there, whatever else, like, you're a completely different team. So they've got to get that figured out when they go on the road. And again, just the game plans when they're taking on these better teams. You can't pucker up. You still got to go for it. And you got to go out there and play big boy football when you're going up against these better teams. Correct. You can't just become a conservative team out there. Can't happen.
Agree completely. Absolutely agree. And they've got the guys to do it. They've got the guys on the roster to do it. Even with these three guys that are transferring, you still have plenty of talent on this roster. Plenty.
So, Sam Hartman, bowl game. You might remember Sam Hartman, after the Wake Forest game last week, said, "Hey, I got two more," is what he said. So I asked Marcus Freeman today if he has had any specific conversations with Sam Hartman about whether or not he is definitely playing in Notre Dame's bowl game, whatever bowl game that happens to be. And here's what he said.
I plan for Sam to play in the bowl game. And obviously when he said that, I think that's where his head is too. We'll have to have a meeting to make sure it's still there. But again, that's what these conversations are for. And unless I hear otherwise through a conversation, my plan would for Sam Hartman to be our quarterback for the bowl game.
So there you go, Vince. He's
go.
planning on Sam Hartman playing in the bowl. You good with that?
Yeah, I'm totally fine with it. I have no problem with that whatsoever. Unless Sam decides he doesn't want to be there, then that's fine. You don't bench the guy that's been starting for you all year. If he's available, he plays, period. I have no problem with that. None.
I agree. And look, I get the perspective of people who say, well, develop the young guys, all that kind of stuff. That happened last year, right? Like, you didn't really have a choice because Tyler Buchner came back and Drew Pine bolted. So who else were you going to play? But look,
it
gave Drew Pine, or it gave Tyler Buchner a chance to play, and he played pretty well. Now, he committed some turnovers himself, but you brought in the transfer portal quarterback, and he ended up transferring after the fact. Like, so who's to say you play Angeli and or Mensah? Maybe you play both of them in the bowl game.
Sure.
Freeman's already said they're bringing in a transfer portal quarterback. So what good does it do you if you're bringing in a portal quarterback and then one of those guys ends up one or both ends up transferring, just like what happened last year? Like,
sure.
What good is that going to do you doing that? And the goal of the game is still to win. And we're going to get to the opt-outs. The goal of the game is to win. And Sam Hartman, Marcus Freeman obviously feels like Sam Hartman gives him the best chance to win.
He does. I mean, I understand what fans want to see. They want to see the new shiny toys, and a lot of them look at bowl games as that they don't matter and all that. Folks, I got to tell you, there's a big difference between 9 wins and 10 wins. This bowl game 100% matters. It 100% matters. It matters a lot, because winning this game, you can look back and be like, 10-win season for Marcus Freeman. That is so important. Okay. So this game matters. This game absolutely matters.
And especially if it does end up being against a team like especially if it's LSU.
Oh my gosh.
Do you want Steve Angeli going up against LSU, or do you want Sam Hartman going up against LSU?
Exactly.
Like, just look at it that way. We don't know for sure that that's who it's going to be, but that's the most projected team for Notre Dame in the bowl. Look at it that way. And it's not a shot at Angeli. The guy is obviously a lot less experienced. I'd rather have Sam Hartman leading my team out there.
And it's still the 23 version of Notre Dame football. This isn't 24 yet. You don't just bench a bunch of dudes who were starting for you because it's a bowl game. That's what your 15 practices are for. That's where you start getting guys ready for the next season, and you get, and all of that. That's what those extra 15 practices are for. Not the game. Not the game. Now, if Hartman goes out there and lays an egg, okay, you bring in whoever's next. That's fine. I would do that at any position, right? But you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. That's not how this works.
Correct. Again, look, I get it. You think that they should be playing some young guys. If that's the hill you want to die on, that's fine. But I disagree. We're just going to have to agree to disagree with that. This is not an exhibition game. Like, technically it kind of is an exhibition, but it's not an exhibition game because it matters for the stature and the status of the program. And we'll actually hear about that right now, because Marcus Freeman also talked about the opt-outs and the conversations they're going to be having with guys this week about both opt-outs, transfer portal, all that different stuff. And he led into kind of some other stuff along the lines with the bowl game as well. So here's his response.
As far as opt-outs, we got back probably about 6 a.m. on Sunday, and I gave the coaches and players off, and we'll meet as a entire team today at 2:40. And so part of the discussions I had with the coaching staff this morning was we do have to have those conversations with the guys in our room about bowl game, about their future here. Do they plan on coming back? Do they plan on transferring? Do they plan on leaving? That's a part of college football. And we have to have those conversations. We have not yet in terms of who will and who won't play in a bowl game. Again, I don't expect every single person on this team to play in a bowl game. That's just the trend right now. My previous two bowl games, but obviously in college football too. But I do want our team to understand how important this bowl game will be to our football program. And, it's an important game, and we want to finish this thing off the right way. So we'll have those conversations this week, starting today through Friday when we get on the road, and we'll figure out from there our plans moving forward. As far as health, I expect everybody to be back by the bowl game, other than those guys that have season-ending injuries. But guys with soft tissue injuries, I do plan to get everybody back by the time we play in a bowl game.
So there you heard Marcus Freeman, and you heard some different bits, the stuff that I was talking about, in terms of the coaches being on the road. He talked about they'll be on the road by Friday. They're having these conversations with the players this week. But he started into the conversation about the importance of the bowl. And a follow-up question that I asked along those lines was, in his experience, how much does the bowl matter in terms of, whether or not players are going to opt out / how much does the opponent matter? Because it had been asked about the possibility of LSU in there as well. So here's the response to that. And then we can kind of talk about all of this at once after you hear from Freeman.
I would hope it doesn't. The reality is that some people say, well, we're not playing in the playoffs or for a national championship. Why would I play? But, I'm pretty sure after the Louisville game, there was an understanding we probably aren't going to make the playoffs with 2 losses. And, I appreciate these guys that continue to commit to this football program and to their teammates to continuously finish out this season. And that's my message to all of our players is we'll meet is that, game 13 for us is really no different than any game after we lost to Louisville, right? Is that this is about finishing off, this season with your football team. And that's my message to them, right? Is that if it was only about a national championship and you had that decision you could have made, earlier in the year. And so, now every individual is different, right? And every individual has to make a decision that's best for them. And as a head coach, I love these guys and I'll always support them, but it's my job to give them my opinion on the importance of this bowl game and finishing this season off the right way too.
So there's the response. You heard it all there, Vince, but again, he talked about he's trying to drive home the importance of this game. And I did like what he said about after you lost to Louisville, you were out of playoff contention at that point as well. So there's no difference between any of the games that were played after Louisville to this point and one more game in the bowl game in terms of, how much the game means and all that kind of stuff. So what did you think when hearing all that?
Oh, he's absolutely right. And I think that's the consistent message that you have to send to the players. Like, we're not just going through the motions here. Like, this is important. There's a reason that we're going to play this game. We're not opting out of a bowl game. Like, we're as a program, right? We're not taking a vote like they did when Weiss was here about going to a bowl game. Like, that's not what we're doing. We're going to play in this game. When we strap it up between the lines, it's important. And they all understand why it's important. Okay. Because again, 9-4 is way different than 10-3, man. Like, I know it's only one game, but that is a massive difference when you're looking back. And we can all be disappointed with only 10 wins this season, and you are more than welcome to do that. I'm disappointed as well. But again, there were good things that occurred, and they still took a step forward. It wasn't as big of a step as we all wanted, but they still did take a step in the right direction, especially if they hit this 10-win mark. And so it is important. It's very, very important. Now, if we're going to talk about the transfer portal, we're going to talk about opting out for the NFL and all of those different things, what people have to understand, and the reason that we're seeing guys already declaring for the portal is because they shrunk the portal window this year. I don't know if you're aware of this or not.
2
Sean.
weeks. I've had a couple stories about the portal out there on the website already.
Yeah. So they shrunk you. So you're
or at least they were part of notebooks or something.
Yeah.
So it's a shorter window.
It's 30 days. That's it. It's 30 days. And it is from next Monday, I believe, December 4th for 30 days, which puts it right after Notre Dame's bowl game, if they end up in the ReliaQuest Bowl, which is January 1st. And so you can't wait until January 2nd. You can't play in the bowl game, wait till January 2nd to declare that you're going into the portal, because that doesn't give you any time to contact coaches, go visit program. Because remember, when you go into the portal, you are now a recruit again. You're visiting campuses, you're talking to coaches, you're doing all these things. And legally, you can't do any of that until your name is officially in the portal. Right. And once you decide that you're going to the portal, you're done at Notre Dame. They're not going to play you in the bowl game. And so if you're planning to transfer, you can't play in the bowl game just because of the timing of it. You just can't. There's not enough time afterwards. So yeah, it's rough. It's rough, but that's the way it is. And so every person that's going to go, they're going to go and they're going to make it known quickly.
2 portal windows. The first one that, as you said, starts a week from today, Monday, December 4th, and runs through January 2nd.
There you go.
So that is the first portal window. And the spring window is April 16th through April 30th. So just 2 weeks.
Spring ball.
Yeah, exactly. But this window, is a little bit more abbreviated. This winter window is a little bit more abbreviated.
I believe it used to be 45 days, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds right. Yeah.
You had the opportunity to do it kind of after your bowl game. And, last year, Sam Hartman declared after the bowl game, even though there were kind of some rumors out there, but his bowl game was December 23rd. Right. And so it wasn't January 1st. That's a big difference, right? And so, again, it's just different. You have to make these decisions based on the information that you have, the timetable you have, all that.
And I heard you and Brian and Ryan talking about transfer portal in, I believe it was the post-game mailbag. And the timeline that I remember is, because I think Brian kind of had his timelines in terms of actual Sam Hartman news. Gotcha. It was early December from kind of what we understood that Marcus Freeman told the quarterbacks, Tyler Buchner and Drew Pine, we're bringing in a transfer portal quarterback.
Yes.
Now, Pine was also, kind of told, oh, and by the way, Tyler Buchner's probably going to start in the bowl game.
And that was
Drew Pine leaves early December after getting that news. It wasn't, you're right. It wasn't until after Wake's, there were rumblings that were starting. So they told him a portal quarterback was coming in. Didn't say necessarily which one.
Right.
And then the rumblings started with Drew or with Sam Hartman after Wake Forest Bowl, like you said, December 23rd. And then it was early January that the news broke and he was on campus, and the rest is history, basically. So it was definitely spread out a little bit more in terms of all that stuff.
Right.
And we already know that Notre Dame plans to go bring in a transfer portal quarterback this year as well. So
and he's made that
get ready for
very, very clear. And so whether that's a depth guy that they go get, like everybody's talking about, or whether that's, a starter or somebody that's going to compete for the starting position, or, whatever the case may be, they're going to get a portal quarterback, folks. So like you said, prepare yourself for that. It's happening.
Yes. Definitely happening. And this from Josh earlier, just remember, this is the last year for the COVID guys. I think, so the portal will be heavy with 5th and 6th year guys. They see the talent coming. Thanks for your service, but you had 4 or 5 years. And basically the 2020 season, remember, that was the COVID season. Yep. And if you were a freshman that year, that was the last class to get the extra year of eligibility. Now there's still some 2019 guys, and I'm trying to remember if Nana, because this was already his 5th year, so it's 23, 22, 21, 20, 19. Yeah, so he would have been a 2019 guy, and he still gets the 6th year,
right?
Because he didn't play that year. So the 19 guys are still part of that. Like if you were on campus during that 2020 season, you were part of that as well. But the 2020 class of freshmen, or the 2020 class, is the last one that gets that exemption, the COVID exemption for the 6th year. But you're right, there is a glut out there. So you're going to see a lot of movement with them, because it is in a lot of these cases, I think, a decision on youth versus all this experience. And if you're still a role player by the time you're a
Sure.
fifth year guy, then what's the benefit in keeping that experience versus getting, some more of that young talent that you've been recruiting on the field?
For sure. Yeah.
Speaking of
absolutely.
which, are you ready for rapid fire?
Oh, this might be the latest we've ever gotten to rapid fire, but let's roll, baby. Let's go.
My goodness. You're right. We said we were going to be here for a while.
Hey, it's all
tonight.
good, man.
But
I got nowhere to be.
Nana Osafo-Mensah is the first guy who declared today. We've had 3 transfer portal guys declare for Notre Dame. Nana Osafo-Mensah was the first. Chris Tyree was the second. Zeke Correll was the third. And we'll get to all of them here again in a second because, again, we've got a bigger live crowd who's kind of jumped in, sits in. Let's start with Nana since he was the first. Fill in the blank. It's blank that he entered the portal today.
Surprising to a degree. I thought Nana had a great opportunity to really cash in on some major playing time next year because obviously right now he plays behind Javontae Jean-Baptiste.
Mm-hmm.
And, he still played very well, didn't complain, was a great leader, did all those things, even though they went to the portal and got somebody over him in the depth chart. He was a true team guy. And I thought he would be ready to step in and be the guy next year. Maybe they've told him that that's not going to be the case. I don't know what the situation is. So it is a little bit surprising and a little bit disappointing at the same time because I was looking forward to seeing Nana out on the field, wreaking some havoc this year. But I think we all kind of knew the writing on the wall on senior day when, after the game, he was crying. And so that felt like that was probably going to be it. I just didn't think about it, to be honest with you. And it just stinks. Just stinks.
I agree. To me, the initial news of this was a little bit shocking, but at the same time, it's like you do have some young talent coming up behind him. You've got guys like, as Tommy Guns just pointed out, Brennan Vernon. You've got Josh Burnham as well, who is listed as number 3 on the. Burnham was on the depth chart on
both sides.
On both sides back there. Jean-Baptiste had a great season, though. I mean, the best season of his career, and we can save him kind of for another time. But the natural next step would have seemed that Nana was going to rise to the top of the depth chart next year. Now, again, how much, what was that conversation like between a pending 6th-year guy who did have the most productive season of his career? He had a nice year, made some good plays for him, versus some of those young guys coming in. And now it's time to get some of those young guys that you've been recruiting on the field, how much that came into it. But I was surprised because of what you were talking about. Like, I felt like it was the next natural step for him to move into probably, a bigger role, most likely a starting role next year. But that's not going to happen now.
Yeah, like I said, so that's disappointing. I like Nana as a player. I liked him as a kid. And so it's disappointing. I honestly, all 3 announcements today are disappointing. I understand all of them, but they're all disappointing to me.
Yeah. Zeke Correll, the Irish center, announced a little bit more than an hour ago as we speak. And Chris Tyree this afternoon, a couple of hours ago, he announced. And we can talk about both of them. And to me, it's Tyree is the most disappointing. And when you look at some of these transfers over the last few years, they've lost mostly guys the last 2 or 3 years who were, mid to lower depth chart kind of guys who are getting passed on the depth chart. Excuse me, I had a little sneeze there.
Bless you.
And who weren't getting, some opportunities. So they moved along. Like Logan Diggs, most prominent guy of the last few years.
Yeah.
Look at what the running back room did this year. There was talent there.
Yeah, and that was more about he wanted to be closer to home and all that. And I get, okay, cool.
Right.
I
mean, the biggest disappointment with Chris Tyree is still this is a guy who's a dynamic playmaker.
Correct.
They needed to get the ball in his hands more, and they just didn't. He touched the ball 29 total times this season, 26 on receptions for over 400 yards and 3 rushes this year. 29 total times. That's less than 3 times per game for a guy who I know, moved from running back to wide receiver. But the whole thing is like he was supposed to be, like a multi-positional, like a slash type guy. You can do this with him. You can do that with him. You can do all different kinds of things. They had no imagination with Chris Tyree, and they just
Correct.
failed to get him the ball. He needed 3 to 4 times more targets per games than what he ended up with this season. Yep. And the guy wants to play in the NFL, and I can't blame him for just saying, look, it's time to move on, and I'm going to give myself that chance someplace else.
Yeah, I mean, I get it from his standpoint. It's just a shame that Notre Dame never used him the way that they should have, period, end of discussion. And people are saying it's time for new blood and all that. No, when you're talking about Chris Tyree, it is not time for new blood. That's the thing about wide receiver. You can get multiple guys on the field, and you can work with multiple guys, and multiple guys can touch the football. And losing Chris Tyree is losing a playmaker, period, end of discussion, period.
Thank you, Tommy. I think Tommy is telling me that we agree on something, which I don't think always happens, but he agrees on the 10 to 12 touches per game for Tyree. Absolutely. That's what the targets at least needed to be 10 to 12. And then if you're in the 10 to 12 target range, you're probably getting 7 to 10, balls in his hands by the time all is said and done. And that's what they needed. He ended up with the most yardage on this team, but Rico Flores Jr., a talented guy himself, but he had one more reception than Chris Tyree had this year as a true freshman. And I just, again, like Chris Tyree, I like Rico Flores. I like his future better than I like his present. His present is pretty good, but I like his future a lot more. Chris Tyree just should have had the ball in his hands more this year.
And it doesn't take a great quarterback to hand off and to pitch and to do things of that nature to get Chris Tyree the football.
Yep. And then the other one was Zeke Correll, the center. I'll let you start off. Your thoughts on Zeke Correll entering the portal?
Yeah, we kind of talked about it at the top of the show, but I know people have joined us late, and that's awesome. Thanks for joining us. My thoughts on Zeke Correll are pretty simple, to be honest with you. If I was the head coach, and I don't know that this is the way that it went down, but this is the way it would go down for me, is I would bring Zeke in, and I would tell him, Zeke, thank you so much for what you gave to this university. I'm so happy that you're leaving with your degree. You're a multi-year starter for us. You battled your butt off day in and day out. You were a team guy. You did everything we asked of you. Thank you. But it's time to pass the torch. And if you want to use your next year of eligibility someplace else, I encourage you to do it. But your time at Notre Dame is done. And, I'm giving him a huge hug and then escorting him out the door. I mean, that's just how I would operate, because we have had the luxury of seeing Ashton Craig do what he's been doing the last 2 games. And he's been pretty darn good. And you can see the future of this offensive line and how athletic they are, how quick they are, how strong, how big, all of those things. You can see it. You can see it. And that's not always the case, right? We don't usually get to see these things, but because of the unfortunate, news of the concussion and all of those things with Zeke, we've been able to see that for the last 2 games. And that's the conversation I would have with Zeke. He did everything in his power to do what he needed to do at Notre Dame, and I would thank him for that. But in this case, it is time for the new blood. In this case, it's different with every player. It's not that way with Chris Tyree, but it is that way with Zeke.
Agree with everything you said. Zeke Correll did a great job in his time as Notre Dame's starting center. I do believe, though, that like I said, I really like what we've seen from Ashton Craig in these couple games, from a physicality standpoint, from a size standpoint, to be able to, to kind of hold and also move that center of the line. I really like what we've seen of him as the anchor in there. So it's, nothing but the best for all of those guys. And of course, Zeke Correll included. Coach D's Burner asks if Kristofic is back. Well, we haven't seen an announcement yet. He has eligibility remaining. I don't know.
We're all going to find out together. That's the thing, folks. Like, we all find out together because they all announce on social media.
Yeah. So they let them make their announcements on their own.
It's not like we get a list of guys and that we have to keep secret. Like, that's not how this works, and, sometimes we have sources in a family or something like that. But for the most part, we all find out when you all find out. So we don't know the answer to that.
So a couple of different things from Chris Galloway. And he says, so we're back to blaming the OC. And he was talking about that when we were having the Chris Tyree conversation, like right when we moved to the Zeke conversation. And then he asked, what's the difference between Zeke and Tyree? And like, are we blaming the OC? not necessarily, again, there's a combination of a lot of things.
Plenty of blame to go around.
But if I were in charge of running the offense and I had Chris Tyree versus really young but inexperienced and also talented guys that I had, and I've got a guy like Chris Tyree who has made the investment, and a big investment, in moving from running back to wide receiver and all the things that he could potentially do. Again, like, you don't have to look far. Like, look at the NFL, look at other places around college football. If you've got a guy, like everyone wants to say he is him and all that stuff, that is your primary read. And, like, it's not that hard for Sam Hartman just to take the snap of the football, make the drop in rhythm, look Tyree, first read. If it's there, you go to him. If it's not, then you go through your progressions. If Chris Tyree was the first read each time, he very easily could have had the targets and touches that we were talking about, because I guarantee there would have been many times that he was open.
Oh, yeah.
That he wasn't getting the football, but that's not how they ran this offense. And as we've talked about earlier in the show, there are things that have to be addressed about the way they run this offense. There's no doubt about that. And in terms of the difference between Tyree and Correll, I mean, to me, Tyree has a much higher upside in terms of the NFL. Zeke Correll is a good college center, but it's going to be much more difficult for him to turn that into a professional career than it will be for Chris Tyree, because Chris Tyree has speed. Chris Tyree has skill. Look at the health. I mean, he has stayed relative, healthy for the better part of his career. He doesn't have injury history. So there's a lot more upside, I think, for Chris Tyree than Zeke. That, to me, is the biggest difference.
Absolutely. I mean, Chris Tyree still could be a playmaker for Notre Dame. There's no doubt in my mind. He just could. And so that's the difference. Like, Zeke Correll, he played his career at Notre Dame. It's over. It's time to move on, because we see what is behind him and how good it was. I'm sorry, Chris Tyree is still one of, if not your best slot receiver. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking with it. Okay, you're telling me that Chris Tyree couldn't have run the over route that Greathouse ran, on Saturday's game? Come on now, like that. He wasn't utilized properly. Period. He's a playmaker. You're losing a playmaker. That's the difference to me.
Right. USMA 87 says, love Tyree. How many passes / targets did he drop? Not enough to make up the difference between the targets that he had and the targets we were talking about in the 10 to 12 range. You could probably count on 1.5 hands the drops that he had all year.
I'd say one.
It's
one
not
hand.
that. It's not. I was going to say it's not one per game.
Yeah.
And even if it was one per game, that's only one more touch per game. So, and look, NFL receivers drop balls all the time. A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, two of the best receivers in the game, all of them. Des Bryant, like, Des is obviously retired now, but I'm just, CD, whoever, name your receiver. They drop balls all the time, so you can't fall back on that. That to me isn't reason enough.
No, not even close.
Okay, so Audric Estime finished 24 yards short of the Notre Dame single-game rushing record of 262 yards against Stanford Saturday night. It was set by Julius Jones 20 years ago. Estime, of course, didn't play in the fourth quarter, and Freeman was asked afterwards if he knew how close Estime was to the record when they took him out of the game.
No, I didn't know that. If he came up to me and said, "Coach, can you leave me in because I'm 24 yards away?" It would have been a decision I have to make. But there's two things, right? I want to do what's best for Notre Dame, but also what's best for Audric too, but I did not know that. I knew he was getting close to the single season TD record. I think he set that. I don't know how many he rushed for, 200 plus? 238. It's a lot of yards. I don't know what record he was chasing, but that is a heck of a performance.
So what do you think, Vince?
I think there's no reason that a head coach should ever know what a record is during a game. It's not his job. That is not his job, man.
True.
So I have no problem with him not knowing what the rushing record was, because you had no idea that Audric Estime was just going to go beast mode on these guys and just run over them and have almost 200 yards at halftime. Like, there's no way he could have known that going in. Now, he knew the touchdown record going in because you can surmise that he had an opportunity to get 3 to 4 touchdowns. Like, I think that's a logical, record to have in your head because somebody probably mentioned it to him going into the game. So I get, but there is no chance that he knew, and he was honest about it. He had no idea what the single game rushing record was. So, and nobody in the press box knew it either unless they looked it up. And it's not like Marcus Freeman is Googling the rushing record during the game.
I get what you're saying. But there are plenty of times during the game where during the season where Estime has been approaching 100 yards.
That's
and they've
different.
left him. But let me finish.
Let
me finish. Okay. Should the head coach know it off the top of his head? No. But they have a full-time SID who stands on the sideline, whose job I don't know what it is other than standing on the sideline. And if you're the SID and like somebody's telling him that that Estime is getting close to 100 yards, just like someone can tell him that he's getting close to, the single game rushing record. I get it. There's an SID down there on the field. If that SID has a job, that's part of it.
You want my honest opinion?
Sure.
As the head coach at Notre Dame or head coach anywhere, the SID comes anywhere near me during a game, I'm punching him in the throat. I don't want that person anywhere near me during a game.
I see that person in the background behind.
I see him in the background all the time, but I don't
pretty
see
close.
I don't see her talking to him. I've never seen her talk.
But they can go through another coach, and
that's possible.
Someone's telling him, Vince. Someone's telling them that Audric Estime is getting close to 100 yards. Like, that's not just something that they pull out of their hat. Someone's letting them know.
Well, that's also like all over the stadium too. Like they roll stats on the stadium scroller all the time. Like that's, I don't know. That one's a little bit different to me. Like an in-game, like total in a game, like that's a little bit different. 100 yards. I also have a problem with them trying to get him 100 yards when he should be out of the game. So I do have a problem with that.
That's a fair point too. And I felt like there were times he should have been out of the game earlier, but they've left him in there.
Yeah.
And that's exactly right.
Yeah, we've talked about that. And so that's not like a new take. Like we've talked about the fact they've left him in the game far too long in the past. So
at the very least, that SID I'm talking about could talk to the running back coach, and the running back coach can let that information be known.
I gotta tell you, if the way that game was going, if they came up to me at the end of the third quarter and said, hey, he's 25 yards away from the all-time rushing record in a game, I'd have been like, I don't care. We've got all of our number 2s in. I'm not leaving Audric Estime in the game. I'm not doing it. That would have been my response. I'm like, okay, awesome. I don't care. But Notre Dame has proven that they do care about records like that. So I don't know what he would have said if somebody mentioned that to him.
Right.
I would have said, I don't care. That doesn't matter to me.
And ultimately, does it matter that much? No. It's just a record. But the bottom line is Audric Estime is an awesome freaking running back. And I said last week that, this whole, and everybody knew it, this whole Doak thing was going to be an issue, right? And look what he does. He has the best game of his career the week he's snubbed by the Doak Walker Award. And he's got the single season touchdown record, and he is 5th all time in Notre Dame history in terms of single season rushing.
And, we'd be having a way different conversation if they put him back in the game behind the number 2 offensive line to get 25 yards and he blows out his knee. Like, the number 2s were already in the game. Like that was done,
Personally, this is another conversation, but personally, in the instance where Jabron Payne was ruled to have fumbled and then they changed it correctly on the instant replay. Look, I get Payne has been short yardage guy and all this different stuff, but with the game that Audric Estime is having, I don't care who your short yardage back is. I want Audric Estime in the game if I'm sniffing the end zone.
Well, he was their 2-minute back. So he was in there because it was the 2-minute drill.
Again, I get all that stuff, but you've got time when you're down there by the goal line to get Estime in if you want to get him in.
That was fair enough. I just don't know that he was physically ready to go back in the game. Like, he asked to come out of the game multiple times on Saturday
because he was
gassed,
ripping off run after run.
Right.
It's like he's averaging 10 yards a carry.
Oh, absolutely. There was a reason he was gassed. Everybody's like, how come he's not in every single play? Because he's asking to come out of the game. And people are like,
3 yards.
No
all you're asking for is 3 yards before halftime, though. I think he could manage that.
Fair enough, but he still would have been 22 short.
Right. And again, we're talking about two different things. I'm saying
you're right.
I would rather have seen him just in that short yardage score another touchdown, than maybe necessarily going for the record. I'm like, again, I don't have a huge issue, but I'm just saying
it's fun to argue about, though.
Yeah. So a post from X Twitter that I saw this weekend said they hated the play calling after the Angeli interception and that they needed to see him operate the offense. And then, this person also mentioned what we were just talking about, the single season rushing record, but the Angeli play calling specifically. They went from interception to last year's plan of handoff man for Steve Angeli after the interception. So do you buy or sell what this is saying? Should they have let him still run the offense?
I sell it, and here's why. Number one, went out, they tried to throw the ball, and he threw one of the worst interceptions of the year. Like, it's just a terrible throw. Terrible read, terrible throw. And at that point, it's like, no, we're just going to hand off at this point. Let's get out of here. Like, there's no point anymore. Like, I have no problem with it, because what do you not know about Steve Angeli at this point that playing against the twos of a
horrible defense,
of a horrible Stanford team, you're playing against their twos? What is that going to show you that you don't already know about Steve Angeli? He's been extremely consistent every other time he's been in the game, and they've run the offense, and he's taken them down the field, thrown nice touchdowns, like all that. You've got that game film. You see him in practice every day. Like, what do you need to see as a coaching staff? I don't care about the fans, what they need to see. That doesn't matter to me. What do you need to see as a coaching staff that you haven't already seen from Steve Angeli in a mop-up role? Yeah. I have no problem with it. None.
You've seen him run the offense against, as you said, some twos out there and with the twos, and like they weren't going to get any more from seeing him out there running the offense against Stanford. They had already turned the ball over 4 times to that point, and almost a fifth, like we just talked about. Like, an Angeli's interception was the 4th. It was noted. I'll say that. I logged it. Oh, we're going back to handoff.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Going back to handoff. But I get it. Like, just get out of there. Run the clock. End the game. Look what the scoreboard said. Right. There was no need to be flinging more balls downfield or, screens or, outs or, wheel plays or whatever they happen to be. Just hand the ball off, let the clock run, and get out of there. That's all that really mattered at that point.
Yep. Brian and I had a nice argument about whether they should have had Kenny Minchie in there running the offense at the end.
And that's what Tyler actually just brought up. And so which side did you lay on
I was on the side that the backup quarterback is in, not the third string quarterback. And there's no point. I don't personally see the point. Brian argued that it's all about development, and you want to develop these guys, and you want to give him an opportunity to run the offense and all of those different things. I don't know. I just don't see. As a coach, am I really going to bypass my second string guy to go to my third string guy?
That's the thing, because then now you create. You've already said you're bringing in a portal quarterback in the offseason. Right. And do you really want to start that now?
Yeah.
Where you threw an interception, so now I'm gonna throw the number 3 guy out there. I think that becomes an even bigger issue. Not just getting out of that game, but locker room and the whole thing now. So I've got no. I mean, the case for playing Minchie, I get to a point, because he hasn't had the opportunity to do that. But I feel like if you were going to do that, maybe you had the conversation with Steve Angeli before the game and just say, look, if it gets to this point, we're going to put in Minchie, because we really haven't got a chance to see him do anything so far.
Yeah,
this year. So we're going to give him the opportunity. This is going to be, his 4th quarter or whatever. Right. That kind of thing. Maybe you have that, but
you have Steven, the very first play, he throws an interception. What message are you sending if the next series you put in Minchie?
Right. Exactly.
I don't like
That's
that
what I'm saying.
either.
It's like, then it's a negative message.
Right. I don't like that message at all.
You screwed up, the whole thing.
Right.
So, yep. So here's Javontae Jean-Baptiste, the big man, talking about the stiff arm that he had on the 60-yard blocked field goal return for a touchdown against the Cardinal.
I used to play a little running back, so I know that like when I get the ball in my hands, what to do with it if I get the opportunity. So it's fun.
I'm just imagining Javontae Jean-Baptiste as like an 11-year-old running back, and he's like a guy that we used to know, Shaq Van, who played at Eastern Michigan, played here in town for you and with Jesse at Adams High School. Like, I remember when Jesse was playing, they weren't on the same team, but here was this running back on the other team who was like a head and a half taller than everybody. It was like all these little guys out there and this big head just like running through it. That's what I imagine, like hearing Javontae Jean-Baptiste saying that he grew up playing a little bit of running back. But how do you rate that return that he had on a scale of 1 to 10?
Oh, it was a great return. I think I was more impressed with the tight roping of the sideline than I was with the stiff arm. I mean, he stiff armed the punter.
That tightrope on the sideline was nuts, man.
That was athletic as all get out, that part. Like, you stiff armed the punter. Like, that's not a huge deal to me. You outweigh the punter probably by 100 pounds. So that stiff arm wasn't really all that impressive. It was the tight roping of the sideline that was super impressive to me. That was awesome.
I was shocked that he stayed in bounds. I thought for sure he was going out of bounds, when he was trying to, walk that tightrope and stay in.
Oh,
and
it's impressive. Yeah.
I rated a 10, man, for a big man like that.
I forgot
to
I had
move
to rate
like
it.
That.
Yeah. 10.
10 out of 10 for me.
Absolutely.
As Jesse would say, 10 being the absolute best, 1 being the lowest, because Jesse always explains the scale of 1 to 10 to everybody when he's on the show. 10 is the best. That was the best. Javontae Jean-Baptiste's field goal block was awesome. That was fun to see.
No, that was all. And I said this in the post-game show, like, nobody deserved it more than him because of of all the players that are out of eligibility, man, did I want him to have more. Like, of all the guys, he exceeded all of my expectations coming into Notre Dame. I mean, absolutely exceeded them all. I thought he was going to be a depth piece, that kind of a thing. Nope, he was a dude, and he just got rewarded with that touchdown run. That was awesome.
Yeah. By the way, did I say Eastern Michigan or Eastern Washington earlier?
Well, you said Eastern Michigan, but now he's coaching at Washington.
Now he's actually on the staff at the University of Washington.
Correct.
Our own Shaq Van from here in South Bend.
Yep,
so that's awesome too.
Yeah.
So great return by Baptiste. And by the way, we might only be halfway through rapid fire right now. I said coming into the show, we got a lot to talk about today. We're still going for a while. This is officially going to end up being, I think, the longest IB Nation sports talk we've ever done. So welcome to everyone who might be just jumping in the live right now, and glad to have you aboard. We've been going at it for a while.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of stuff coming out of this weekend that I feel all needs to be addressed on today's show. And it's like, I started this morning putting together like stuff from Stanford. And then, like I said, by the time Marcus Freeman's Zoom came around, and then with everything that happened after that, with the transfer portal afterwards, it just exploded. And we've got just a ton to talk about.
You're a busy little beaver, man.
That's right. So Notre Dame got the Legends Trophy back.
Yes, they did.
After beating Stanford. Did you know what the Legends Trophy looked like before the game?
Not a chance. I couldn't tell you what any of the trophies look like except for the jeweled shillelagh between Notre Dame and USC. I know that all 8 rivalry trophies all look different, and they're all unique. I don't know what any of them look like except for the one between USC and Notre Dame. I certainly didn't know it was just a giant bowl like that. Like, weak. I think I saw Freeman drinking Gatorade out of it.
Yes, they poured blue Gatorade into it.
Yeah, it was. I don't know.
I had no idea. I was, for some reason, imagining, like, I don't know, maybe not another shillelagh, but I was imagining some kind of, like big stick kind of thing, maybe like a sledgehammer looking thing.
Right.
I was not expecting, kind of a crystal bowl looking thing. I had never seen it. And again, like they drank some Gatorade out of it.
It's like, okay,
when it was all said and done.
I get like kind of like the Stanley Cup, I guess. You can kind of do anything you want with it.
Uh-huh.
I don't know.
Freeman couldn't chug it all.
Well,
is what D-Rock Irish says. So again, we'll touch on the transfer portals because we've got more people kind of jumping in late. Who was the third portal defection besides Tyree and Nana? Zeke Correll also entered the portal today. 3 different players.
Yep.
Chris Tyree, Nana Osafo-Mensah, and Zeke Correll.
Somebody
entered the portal.
Somebody asked an interesting question, and I don't know that you started or not. Nope, you didn't. So I want to ask you,
okay,
if you're Coach Freeman, do you put a deadline on when you need to know as a Notre Dame staff whether guys are going to declare, whether they're going to opt out, whether they're going to transfer, I need to know by X. What do you think?
I mean, that soundbite that we had of him, he said that they're going to be having the conversations this week and then they're hitting the road this weekend. I would think that they would want to know relatively quickly because they're also going to start bowl practice this week.
Yep.
And you remember last year, a lot of young guys got reps in bowl practice, and we ended up seeing a lot of young guys in the bowl. And that is kind of the other side of this as well. For whatever defections you get in the portal, that means that some of these young guys that people have been clamoring for are going to get some opportunities. So I would think that I would want to know sooner or later if I'm Marcus Freeman.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily, I don't know if I want a complete deadline on it, but I would definitely want to know sooner than later so that we can start making practice plans on who's going to get reps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's transfer portal decisions are the most important. Like those are the ones that you really need to know, because the guys that are going to declare for the NFL, I think we kind of know who has that decision to make, right? It's Cam Hart, it's Joe Alt, it's Audric Estime, Blake Fisher. I would say those are the 4 main guys that you need to know whether they're going to declare or not. Those decisions can go a little bit because they're not going to transfer, right? So those decisions can maybe wait a little bit. I know sometimes you got to get back, draft analysis and all that, like, those kinds of things. But if you're going to transfer, I need to know that this week. Like that, yeah. I need to know if you're in or you're out. I don't want to go.
And look, the portal opens a week from today anyway. So right. I think everyone wants to get in as soon as possible because it 100%. Gives them the best opportunity to find a new home.
Right.
So
yep, absolutely. I need to know that sooner than later. The draft stuff, I'm not as worried about.
A couple of the things that I do have in here. Chris Galloway says Tyree is not a pro receiver. Love his game, but it won't translate to the NFL. Well, I disagree with that. Like I would wager you. I'll put $500 down that Chris Tyree will be on an NFL roster in 5 years. I'm not saying he's going to be a star in the NFL,
sure.
But the guy can play special teams with the speed that he has, especially as a kick returner. He's got to work on the hands and sort of the vision a little bit more as a punt returner. We obviously saw that come into play a couple of times this season and just kind of making that judgment, especially when there's traffic around him and stuff like that. But Chris Tyree is going to be on an NFL roster in 5 years. I guarantee it. I'd put money on it. If there was money to be put on it someplace, I would put on it. So Chris, I mean, if you want to put your money where your mouth is, 500 big ones. I'll lay it down right now. And we'll talk in 5 years.
Hey, look, Desmond Howard had a 10-year NFL career, primarily as a return guy. Okay. He had 123 career receptions, 40 of which came in one season.
Yep.
If Desmond Howard can make a 10-year career out of the NFL being a return guy, guess what? So can Chris Tyree.
Chris says he doesn't bet on football, but I bet your favorite team's ball cap. Okay, I'll bet you a hat. And we're talking 5 years down the line, so somebody better keep track of this. And so 5 years, like we're not like hitting each other up for a hat, and we're going, "Oh, what are you talking about?" But
yeah,
all right, I'll bet you a hat.
I like it.
Mark that down. 5 years, Chris Tyree.
I like it.
I'm just gonna go. I've got 5 years to pick out a new hat, basically. Coach D's burner says playing in the bowl game does not affect redshirt eligibility, correct? That is correct. You can play 4 games in the regular season plus a 5th game in the bowl and still keep your eligibility.
Correct.
So as long as you haven't already gone over.
Christopher's a Cowboys fan, by the way. So
nice.
You can just go in the closet and send him one.
Chris, then, I mean, we might just have to exchange Christmas cards.
This might be now. This might be win-win. You can buy each other a Cowboys hat.
That's right. I like it. All right. So where was I?
I don't know.
So after Michigan got the interception at the end of their game to seal the win over Ohio State, there were a lot of Notre Dame fans piling on, comparing the interception that DJ Brown didn't make at the end of Ohio State's final touchdown drive to the one that Michigan did make. Fair or foul?
If it was like a scale of 1 to 10, it'd be like a 6.5, 7. Fair, I guess. Because yes, did they make the interception and Notre Dame didn't? Yes, that's actually true. And you can boil it down to that, and that's fine. But the Michigan interception was 1,000 times easier.
Yes.
Than the Notre Dame interception.
That was going to be my biggest point. I would like to see so many of these armchair yahoos.
Yeah.
And if you're one of them out there, you're an armchair yahoo. If you're all over DJ Brown about this.
Right.
Like, it's easy. Like, put on a pair of shoulder pads and a tight jersey and a helmet, and then go try to make that play that DJ Brown had to make when he's going up like this. One, it is not easy just to lift your arms when you've got the jersey and the shoulder pads on like that. And 2, the still shot where, the ball is going through DJ Brown's fingertips makes it look a hell of a lot easier than if you actually watch the video, the replay of that play, because the way he had to move just to get there and then make the jump and try to time it and get it in. Everyone wishes he would have brought it in. If he had, we're having a lot different conversation right now. But you're absolutely right. The Michigan play was a heck of a lot easier than the one that DJ
It went
Brown
right into
had
his midsection.
Yes.
He didn't even have to use his hands. So it's a completely different type of interception.
Going down for a ball like that. Like I played outfield, like in high school. And it's a little bit different, obviously, but coming in and toward the ball like that, in, down, and toward the ball, to me, is a heck of a lot easier than trying to go up for a ball like that.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Try lifting your hands over your head with shoulder pads on. Like,
it ain't easy.
It ain't easy, man.
No.
I'm just saying.
Not at all.
Especially when you're wearing, well, never mind. But it's a completely different skill set on the interception. Was it an interception play that we're talking about? That's the only similarity that there is. The type of interception is completely different.
Yeah. I mean, Irish AJ says X makes that play 10 out of 10 times. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
But he wasn't the one who was in position to make the play. Unfortunately. So, we're talking about Watts as an All-American probably versus DJ Brown, who, look, the other side of this whole thing, and again, like talking about guys coming back and transfer portals and all this different kind of stuff. I mean, look at where that safety position was coming into the season and all the question marks that we had with it. Like, could DJ Brown have played better this year? Of course, but there are a lot of other guys who could have played better this year as well. And I don't know where they would be without DJ Brown, again, considering the lack of depth that they had there coming into the year.
Yeah. Yep. Completely agree.
I'm just being fair to him. I'm not saying that he was, great and everything else. I'm being fair to him and what he brought the team, because they needed AJ Brown. Everyone wishes he would have made that play, especially AJ Brown wishes he would have made that play. And that's what I guarantee you. There's no one in the world who wishes it. I think I said DJ Brown. I was thinking wide receiver, not safety. There's no one in the world who wishes they would have made that play like DJ Brown. I guarantee you that.
No doubt about that.
Should Ryan Day be on the hot seat after a 3rd straight loss to Michigan?
100% no. As much as a D-bag as I think that he is, he should not be on the hot seat for losing to Michigan 3 years in a row. Now, look, that's their biggest rival. You got to win that game. I get it, but you can't get fired. Like, I'm sorry. He still has an amazing overall win-loss record. You can't fire him for that. I just that's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
This is an interesting one. I generally agree with what you're saying because he is 1-3 against Michigan. He is 40-0 versus the rest of the Big Ten, which is just insane.
Yes.
And the big thing is next year, he might still get into the playoff this year, depending on what happens during conference championship weekend this week. They're probably going to end up maybe being just outside, especially considering
I think they probably will be outside of it.
Yeah.
I mean,
but again, we'll wait and see. A couple teams lose and you never know. But at the same time, like John Cooper only beat Michigan twice in 13 years when he was at Ohio State. And he lost like 5 of the last 6 times they played, and then they moved on to John Tressel. And that was the knock on Cooper. Good coach, won a lot of games, but he lost to Michigan all the time. And that was one of the nails in his coffin. Now, it's going to be different when this playoff expands to 12 next year. Because they're going to, like, if all they're doing is losing to Michigan, they're going to get in every year.
Every time. Yeah. Every time. And they'll probably advance to a certain degree. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
You might end up seeing 3 Ohio State Michigan games in a year. You might see regular season, Big Ten championship, and the playoff.
Yeah. He's going to have plenty more opportunities. That's for sure. So, yeah. And Christopher Calloway says it sounds like Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly didn't get fired from Notre Dame, though. So, I just, if this becomes a chronic problem over a decade, like it did
with Brian Kelly also beat his rival. He beat USC pretty regularly.
That is very true. He definitely benefited from not having to play them when they were good, but he still beat them. He still beat them. I'm not taking that away from him. Still beat them. Had a lot of trouble with Stanford early on, but be that as it may. So yeah, he doesn't get fired. Now, again, like I said, if this turns into a decade-long problem, that's a different conversation.
Right.
But it's not going to be because of exactly what you said in the expanded playoff.
Yep.
So, yeah. And who's to say Michigan's going to continue to be good? Like, they're probably going to lose their entire coaching staff in a month. So, good luck.
Yeah, true too. So after ESPN's Pete Thamel got threats from Michigan fans for his reporting of the sign stealing scandal, he did his live shots during College Game Day this weekend from inside Michigan Stadium rather than being surrounded by fans outside the stadium. And it prompted Michigan shill Desmond Howard to say this, quote, "What the hell is Pete in the stadium for? Put your big boy pants on and do it in the crowd like you have been," end quote. Reese Davis said he got from the lunatic fringe some threats. So what do you think of Desmond calling out Pete Thamel like that?
Desmond's got a big mouth considering he's standing there surrounded by Michigan fans and he's like a god to Michigan fans. So yeah, big. That's like picking a fight with somebody with all your boys behind you.
Right.
Hold me back. It's like, come on,
like beer
dude,
muscles,
shut your mouth.
It's like,
exactly.
Makes you brave. It's like, oh yeah, man. Got a couple by the way, I love the boycott, Love the boycott that Michigan fans threatened but didn't go through with.
Seriously.
But they were all there. They were all there to cheer on Desmond.
Yeah. It's embarrassing is what it is. Desmond is such a partisan, I'll say it as nicely as possible. He is such a partisan human being when it comes to any kind of analysis that he does that involves Michigan, and just needs to shut up. He just needs to shut up. He's not a professional. And to call out a colleague like that live on the air, that's a whole other level of low class to me.
That's the thing. Like, Desmond Howard was a professional athlete, and he's in his home environment. Not the same for Pete Thamel. Pete Thamel is like, he does not look like, and this is not a shot at Pete Thamel, but he doesn't look like an overly athletic guy. Like, it's
just
like,
saying.
Why would you, like, if you're Pete Thamel and you're getting these threats, why would you put yourself in that situation? And I understand ESPN for not wanting to put him in that situation. And I just thought it was for a guy who is a professional athlete and who is supposed to be now a professional broadcaster. Desmond has done game day for a long time now to call out your colleague, and doing it on national TV like that is just low rent, man. It's just very low rent. Desmond Howard should be better than that. And that was it was just uncalled for. It was just
and I have no problem with Pete Thamel doing what he did, because you're telling me that, okay, first of all, they're going to send threats to me, and whether those are founded or unfounded doesn't matter, because you're asking me to stand in a crowd of a bunch of liquored up fools. And who knows? It only takes one moron. It only takes one moron to do something. And yeah, I'm going to the stadium, man. I'm not going to sit out here with these idiots.
Because
no way.
How much security can you put around him to protect him at that point?
Right.
And you're talking about, a couple thousand, however many fans out there. Like you said, it takes one guy, and you can't see all of them.
Yeah, exactly. So there is no chance that I would have been standing in the middle of that crowd. No chance. So yeah, and it's ESPN, so they're probably not going to do anything, but something should be done to Desmond. Fine him, suspend him. They should do something, because you don't call out a colleague like that. And it wasn't even like a colleague on another network.
Right.
It's the guy that you literally work with every week. Like, that's messed up.
I agree. I completely agree. I'm like, what's that relationship now after he calls him out on national TV like that? Right. And at least the other guys, like Reese Davis, was like, well, look, Desmond, come on. Like, have a little bit of sense here.
All of them, they were like, whoa.
Yeah, I know. They were like, oh, dude, is it really coming out of your mouth right now?
Like, because I expect stupid stuff, to come out of a certain guy's mouth on that bench. Not necessarily. Well, I guess I do expect it from him, but like, dude, that's just low. That was just a low ball comment.
Our final topic of the night. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Mike Elko is Texas A&M's new head coach.
It sucks, because that's where Notre Dame goes for game 1 of next year, and that's where they're coming up here in game 1, I think, or at least the following year, right? That sucks, man. I was really hoping that it was going to be like Stoops or somebody like that I feel really good about. I really like Mike Elko as a head coach and as a program builder, and it may not happen, as quickly as game 1 next year, right? He's walking into an S storm, as they say, but give him a year, give him a couple years. Like, I think he could turn this group around. I really do think that, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. So I don't like it at all. I'm glad they're getting this A&M series out of the way, but I think he's going to be dangerous down there. I was very happy when it was Stoops that was going to get the job.
I think in the long run, he probably will be. I think, like, for the short term, season opener, new head coach, I would still rather take my chances with that going into the season than even, midway through the season. It'll be different, though. They should be definitely better by the time they come up here to make the return trip. So,
yes,
I mean, he's obviously a good head coach, and we saw that with lesser talent at Duke, even though, he had a really good quarterback at Duke, obviously. There wasn't a whole lot else around him offensively, but that's going to change. There's some talent down there, assuming they stay, because that's going to be a big question as well. What happens to Texas A&M with the transfer portal? Because, it's obviously blowing up here on day one for a lot of people. There's all kinds of tweets and reports and everything else going out about transfer portals. I did have to laugh, though. Right before we came on, there was a video of the introductory press conference, and it's like Elko and these administrators and all these people, like they're arm in arm and they're singing whatever the A&M fight song is. And it looks a little bit odd. But hey,
man,
they're all in. And I did see that, he's got his contract incentivized. It is all.
Did you see it? Did you read it?
Yeah.
There's a lot of money to be had.
There is,
friends.
There is.
And any incentive that he hits, they add a year to his contract,
yeah,
which I thought was very interesting. The postseason ones.
And I mean, they obviously have a good feel for him because of the time that he spent there at A&M as defensive coordinator before he went to Duke. So, I mean, good for him, but he is jumping into the SEC as well.
Yeah.
We'll see if he can do it. But like, for all the resources, all the money, and everything else that A&M has, it has been proven over a long period of time that it is still really tough to win down there in Aggie land. So
you see that buyout?
$6.5
million.
A lot lower than this one too. All right. Well, we didn't make 3. We made 2 hours, though.
We made 2. And that's definitely a record for IB Nation Sports Talk. So you're welcome, people. You're welcome. Right.
Glad to have you here with us today. Got more shows, of course, coming up during the week. I'm going to be gone for a couple of days. We're going to Tennessee for Notre Dame women's basketball. ACC, SEC Challenge on Wednesday. We're traveling tomorrow night. I think, was it you and Jesse on Wednesday? Does that sound right?
No idea. I'm going to have to look.
All right. I have to look at the schedule. I believe it's you and I on Thursday. There'll be more shows. There'll be more talking. Of course, Brian, Ryan, and everybody else will have other shows going on. Chris Galloway, 5 years from now, 2028. I am eyeballing a couple of new hats. So, yeah.
Just saying.
That's right. By the way, Hannah Hidalgo, another Rookie of the Week honor for her today.
Yep, and men's soccer makes it to the Elite 8, and they're going to host IU for a chance to go to the Final Four. IU's a darn good soccer team, so it should be a lot of fun, probably in the snow.
All right. Hit that like button on your way out if you haven't already. We appreciate you being here today, and, of course, subscribe, rate, and review on your podcast platforms, and we will talk to you later on IB Nation Sports Talk.